Hello guys, Dan here from Dan's Tech. In today's video guys, I'm going to be bringing you a review of the Zotac GTX 1060. I've recently taken a look at a GTX 1070 and I'm going to say I'm very impressed by the new architecture that Nvidia have brought out, as well as it being very power efficient. It's very fast, and in general the cards that I've had a look at, they do stay relatively quiet. So we're going to be having a look at the Zotac variant of the 1060. I have previously had a look at a palette version. That card was good, however the cooling solution wasn't brilliant, and one thing I did conclude on in the outro for that video was that the cooling solution in general creates, just say, an average amount of noise. So with this variant costing a little bit more, I am expecting the Zotac card to be a tad quieter, even though it is actually ready to run a tiny bit faster, about 40-50 MHz faster. So without further ado, let's get into it. To get started, as a very quick overview of what we get in the box. On top you'll find a Zotac product leaflet and a quick start guide. Of course you do also get the GPU in some bubble wrap and a power conversion cable. This one's a dual 4-pin Molex to 6-pin PCIe connector. Onto the card, I'm quite surprised there's no foam packaging. Even cheaper cards tend to have this. Besides, this product does only cost over £250. Anyhow, as for the card's dimensions, these are 210mm by 128mm. As for the thickness, this is the standard dual slot thickness. As for the cooler strapped to the card features dual 90mm fans which blow air through the aluminium heatsink. Taking a closer look at the card, you can see the card features two thick copper heat pipes that contact the GPU chip for efficient heat dissipation. The shroud for this card is made of both metal and plastic, and being honest, I think it looks pretty damn nice. I'm quite a fan of the metal used here and think overall it's a pretty nice looking card with its fancy fans, which both do have metal stickers stuck onto the middle, so when they spin up they look pretty nice. At the top of the card it features a Zotac logo which surprisingly doesn't light up. I'll be sure to get back to the cooling performance of this card and report the noise levels of the card nearer the end of the review. As for the power requirement of the card, there's a single 6-pin power connector on top. Zotac recommend a minimum of a 400 watt power supply, making this card very efficient, being rated at 120 watts maximum. Also, as mentioned in my other review for the 1060, unfortunately Nvidia have decided to cut SLI out of the equation for the 1060. As mentioned before, I personally think this is quite a dumb move, as the popular AMD RX 480, the main competitor, does support multi-GPU. As for some further specs on this particular model, the card features 1280 CUDA cores clocked at 1556 MHz with a boost of 1771 MHz. The card also features 6GB of GDDR5 video RAM sat on a 192-bit memory bus. As for the outputs, this card features 3 DisplayPort outputs in addition to a single DVI and HDMI port. Anyhow, it's about time we install the card and get playing some video games to see how it performs. As always, I'm going to be doing the live benchmarking with the card. This is going to be on my standard test rig with an i7-4790K clocked at 4.2 GHz and 16 gigs of memory. If you want to see the raw 10 minutes of each game played at each setting, do feel free to check out my second channel I maintain here on YouTube. I'll have this listed in the good old description. First up, jumping into Battlefield 4 with the high preset, the card looks to be doing very well, drawing 143 FPS. Quite impressive. Switching the graphics settings to Ultra, we do of course see a decrease in frames, however still a very high number at over 100 FPS at 104 FPS average, again passing my expectations for sure. And as for 4K at high settings, this card does relatively well, pushing 54 FPS on average. Very surprised this figure was above 50 FPS personally. Moving on to a slightly more demanding title, GTA 5. Running the game at high settings first with 2x MSAA, the card seems to be doing very well, pushing 103 FPS as you can see in the gameplay. Now backing out of the game and launching it up again with the settings now all maxed, but with MSAA set to ×4 instead of ×8, the card was able to push 68 FPS. Moving on to my last test in GTA 5 at 4K with high settings set with 2x MSAA, the card does surprisingly well, being able to push 41 FPS on average. Just like Battlefield 4, this is a good frame rate and is more than acceptable if you wish to play at 4K at a tad lower overall frame rate. I personally would recommend Ultra at 1080p. Next up we have Need for Speed 2016. First up, with all the settings set to high at 1080p with FXAA turned on, the 1060 can output 105 FPS on average, very impressive. Now keeping it 1080p and raising all the settings to maximum with TA anti-aliasing, we see a decrease in frames to 80 FPS, still a very healthy number indeed. And finally, as for the 4K results, running the game at medium with HB80 and FXAA anti-aliasing set, the card was able to output 32 FPS. This is definitely on the low side, so personally I wouldn't recommend playing this game at 4K resolution. On to one of my favourite games, Killing Floor 2. With the Ultra preset set, the 1060 does fly away with itself, averaging around 125 FPS. Very impressive. As for changing the resolution to 4K and actually keeping all the settings maxed out, the card was able to deliver a similar result to other games, pushing out 36 FPS on average. Pretty impressive, as you can't play many titles at maximum with the 1060. If you want more frames at 4K, you can simply lower the game settings to high instead of having it on Ultra. For both tests, the Nvidia Flex settings were disabled. Lastly, onto an actual benchmark. In Valley at 1080p with the Extreme HD preset, the card was able to deliver 67 FPS on average after testing the card 5 times, 1 FPS faster than the 1060 Dual from Palette. As for clock speeds, the card seemed to be running at 140 MHz over its rated boost clock, which personally is, well, very good. As for some more statistics, moving on to power draw, the card together with all the other components in the system, including an i7 and 16 gigs of memory and also many drives, the system did pull 252 watts total. As for temperatures, the card hit a maximum of 73 degrees throughout all the testing, while staying incredibly quiet with a fan speed of a mere 38%, and I've had some pretty loud cards in my time. Do note that all 1060s and 1070s have their fans disabled at lower temperatures, which is around 55 degrees, so they are inaudible at idle. Anyhow, take a listen. So guys, to conclude on the Zotac 1060, overall I'm very impressed. As I've said, you do get some very nice scores at 1080p and also 4K, unbelievably. And yeah, for a card that's relatively inexpensive, you can play some games at 4K. It's very impressive, and again, I'm very impressed by the power consumption figures, and this card does stay relatively quiet, which is very nice. As I said in the intro, the palette card that I did take a look at, the noise that you kind of got from that was average, and then this one does create a lot less noise, which is very good. So if you're wanting to acquire a card, I would recommend this Zotac variant over the palette variant, even though, you know, it is a little bit more expensive, but, you know, you generally pay more money for better products. So guys, thank you very much for watching. If you want to pick up this card, you know, Amazon links will be in the good old description, as well as a link to Zotac's website for further specs and photos. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, and also subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.